equivalent to 64% of their first half 2008 GDP in the first half of 2009. The Chinese government has effectively spent and lent enough in 6 months to buy 122 Ford-class aircraft carriers at U.S. $8 billion apiece. It is akin to the U.S. government injecting almost $4.5 trillion U.S. dollars to its citizens and businesses before July 2009, an ungodly sum that would impact every asset class under the sun. Is it any wonder that the Shanghai stock index has more than doubled from trough to peak since November lows? And it goes on to say some stuff. You can usually go to your website and download it, but it's a very interesting piece. In other words, what you've heard about China, that China's doing well in this, well, they're simply printing money. It sounds like they're in a great deal of panic. China's been built up, and I've said this early on, but they're built up. Anglosphere is basically sponged off of them, and they've had this symbiotic relationship. China can't really do anything with it. Now China has itself, the political class here has itself in serious problems. They don't have anywhere to go. They could try to make a run for Africa. That would be the only hope, and they are doing that. They're trying to take Africa, but they don't have a military to really do anything. And they're probably going to be used, as this in-game thing comes out, they're going to be used somehow. But China's been built up as something they are not, and they have facing massive problems. So all this analysis about China doing well, when you start talking about that type of a liquidity injection in the economy, you're talking panic. They're trying to keep it from falling to pieces. They're trying to keep chaos from ensuing, and that is a pure panic. It is unprecedented in the history of banking. I was quoting them directly, but these guys made the call. Things aren't as good, and it's all over the planet that there's problems, but things are horrible in China, and things are really going bad there. Things are starting to slide very quickly. There's massive injections, and they're trying to keep it afloat. Because the political class there would be in a lot of trouble very quickly, I guess. And who knows, maybe they're part of the end game, maybe they got something else planned too. But a lot of times you guys hear on TV, when it comes into Anglosphere, that China's doing well, and on the other hand you hear Russia's doing horrible, well, the whole planet's doing horrible actually. But Russia doesn't have a relationship with anybody. They don't need America for anything. They don't need America to buy anything, and they just don't. We have a relationship with them, but they need the Germans, and them and the Germans are becoming close. Why? Because there's a Russian-German axis coming together, whether anyone likes it or not. But Anglosphere, one of the problems I always have with the analysts that you get in Washington, Pentagon, whatever, is that in my opinion, many of them are, in a word, too Judaized. They think like Hebrews, and many of them are Hebrews. So, it's all wordist type thinking. I call it. We call wordist. If only we believe these words to be true. Well, you got to start out looking at tribe and genetics. In other words, race. Once you start there, you can go somewhere. The Russians still do this. Yeah, they think of how it's going to affect the Russians, how it's going to affect the Europeans, and then go on everywhere else in the world. They're not thinking about. But anyways, let me get very specific. Typically in Anglosphere, when you're dealing with these analysts, they believe that military power is linked to economic power. No. That's where their analysis has been so poor on Russia. Why have they always screwed up on Russia? Why did the vice president just go there and say, well, they're not going to be an economic power, so they're not going to be a military power? Well, Russia has never once been an economic superpower. I'm going to repeat that. Russia has never once in the history of Russia been an economic superpower. They have been a military superpower several times. They consistently analyze things upside down, and it's actually working out in the long run. It'll actually help our race that they're so upside down. But 80% of European survival is based on defense. Well, it's only 20% birth rates. Most of the technological innovation is going to come down a defense path. Whether it be the internet or anything else. I made this point before. A lot of these guys think we got to have high birth rates. Well, you got to hold the whole top of the planet, or you better do something. Go into consolidation or something. But there are many different ways to go about it. But their analysis of Russia has always been horrible. When the Bolsheviks took over Russia, Nicholas was the richest man in the world. The Russians themselves were pretty wealthy, but they weren't some big economic superpower like Anglosphere. And it's never once hurt them. In fact, I think it's helpful. We're an island unto ourselves. If you just leave us alone, we're always going to be a military superpower because we got the technology. But as far as these economic superpowers, I think it's overrated. One of the reasons for Russia's lack of economic progress was that Russia doesn't have any major rivers. It doesn't have like a Mississippi where you can put barges on and put transports. It doesn't have a Danube and you know all those different rivers in Europe. And that has always been said, well, they can't be an economic superpower because they don't have the shipping in the river. Well, that's true. One of the czars was had the Europeans in there helping build train tracks. Interesting enough, when communism came down, the only thing that still worked was the Siberian Railway built by the czars, and elements of the television broadcasting, or actually early radio / television broadcasting, which was put together by the czars too, with the help of Europeans. So it's kind of funny. But you could do high-speed rails and get goods and services out to these far lands. You could do, there's some new airline tech. We have all kinds of new aircraft technology that's coming out, and that's what they'll use. Or, you know, this 19th century thinking you see from Anglosphere is always, in my opinion, is upside down. But there'll be a new technology that comes out that helps them move stuff. The Germans will come up with something. I mean, again, it's just ancient type thinking. But they're constantly trying to analyze Russia from being, they're not an economic superpower, so they're not going to be a military superpower. I don't know what they're, you know, they assume that we're an economic superpower, so we're going to be a military superpower. Well, if you start out with the premise that race is real and race matters, and you're trying to replace your gene pool with Mexicans, it ain't going to matter, is it? You can't separate economics. You can't separate the two. Whoever stays whitest is going to win because you're going to get all the gene pool over there. So-called Western civilization moves east. Their analysis is just horrible. You know, they got tunnel vision. They're in a consensus trance, I call it. A consensus trance is quite simply tunnel vision. You can only see one thing. They always analyze things from the same perspective. In short, they do not think in real European terms. Many elements of the top of Anglosphere do not think in European terms, and that's why they get annihilated by Russians. They just can't see it. That's one of the reasons why, in my opinion, some of the early Americans annihilated them, because they thought more Europeans than the Europeans on some level. In other words, they were healthy. I'm not talking about them just being European, but you have to be healthy. Non-wordist thinking. You know, some of the old timers call it Judaizer, Jew think. It is in a way, but it's wordist. You know, it's much broader. You know, Judaism is just another ism, isn't it? But you know, they're backwards, basically. But this type of thinking that you have to be an economic power to be a military superpower, well, Russia breaks the mold on that. Why does Russia continue to keep breaking the mold on that? Because race is real and it matters. And being an economic superpower is highly overrated anyways. America's a so-called economic superpower, and I don't see how it serves American, the original founding stock at all. There was a while when America minded its own business, and America would do a lot better. But you know what I'm saying. I read between the lines. Again, it's backwards analysis. If you cannot start out with tribe or race, if you cannot start out with an organic type of European mindset, you're going to come to bad conclusions. What's interesting about this is this, for once, has went to our advantage over the past 10 to 15 years because they have been so blindsided. Their analysis is so horrible. They've been so off, and that's good. You know, I fell on the ground laughing when they say, you know, I've had this so many times. You know, Russia will, you know, 10 years ago, Russia will never be a military superpower again because they can never be an economic superpower. I just fell on the ground laughing. I mean, it's just like they never read a history book. They don't understand. They actually do not understand that race is real. They do have a Northern European gene pool, and they're always going to have a military superpower if they put their mind to it. Why? Because race is real and these things matter. They have Godzilla. They have the Green Goddess, and they have her. But this old analysis that goes back to they don't have these big rivers. Well, you can build high-speed trains, and we have all kinds of interesting new air technology to ship goods that they just haven't brought out yet. I'm not even going to go into that, but I don't know everything. I just know enough. But that's you know, that's how our race is. It's kind of like when you get into our technology that's going to be coming down the pipeline, it's all stealth bomberish.